let's cut the bullshit. Let's cut the bullshit then. And I'll ask you very frankly. What could possibly be in Europe's own sovereign interest as a polarity to renew its hostilities with Russia over this specific question of Ukraine? Why is it in Europe's interest? Go ahead.
They don't want to be invaded. They might very well be wrong about that. I personally do not think that Putin's ambitions extend beyond Ukraine. This evokes memory.
Hold on. So what you're saying?
They have made a decision.
Wait. Okay. So you're trying to sell me. So
Russia, even if it doesn't roll into Germany, that is scary to them.
So okay, I see.
Rearm against it.
I see.
They have a lot of
what you're trying to sell me. Yeah.
Leads them to that conclusion.
So what you're trying to sell to me right now is that very genuinely, Europe's reaction to what Russia's doing in Ukraine is because they fear they're going to be invaded by Putin and by Russia.
I wonder why Germans might fear an invasion by Russians. I wonder where they got that crazy notion.
It's okay. Let me ask you a question. Hold on. Let me ask you a question.
This is how absurd you are. People don't agree with you, and then you say they didn't make a sovereign decision.
All right,
when they don't agree with you,
it's like those two.
So the level
Spencer, you're getting your panties in a bunch about this whole agreement thing. We got it loud and clear. Your argument is that I'm saying it because they don't agree with me. You don't have to keep repeating that. It's just a pointless thing to raise.
Stop saying it then, because it's obviously
no, because I'm not, because my reasoning is not based on.
No one agrees with you, Haz. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, and you should probably embrace your identity as a marginal figure who promotes Marxist-Leninism, as opposed to claiming that anyone who disagrees with you isn't sovereign.
Richard, I did not expect to come have a debate with you for Richard fucking Spencer to tell me that I'm the one who should awaken to the fact that I'm a marginal figure, okay? So let's simmer down and sit down for a little bit, okay? Now,
I thought I was the leader of the new Europe, according to you. I am simply looking at reality. I am not claiming that Germany isn't sovereign.
We need to get back.
Germany disagrees with me my entire lifetime. You're flip-flopping. I don't claim they're not sovereign.
You're flip-flopping around.
Because I'm not absurd.
So you're saying that Europe's reaction right now is because they fear Russia's going to invade Europe, and that they have historical precedent for this because the Soviet Union took Berlin after Operation like, what are you fucking trying to say? What is your point?
Yes, there is real historical reasons why France and Germany, as the two most important countries in the EU, would fear invasion by foreign powers.
What do you mean? Russia's when Russia took Berlin, you know that was after they. Do you know what happened, right? Are you trying to say the Soviet Union just randomly decided to push eastward and take Berlin? I mean,
no. The Soviet Union reached a pact with Germany. Germany invaded the Soviet Union in Operation Barbarossa, and then Stalin not only pushed the German army out of his sphere, his Grossraum, if you will, but in fact moved forward. And in 1945, clearly anticipated that Europe would soon become communist.
Hold on. We're going to put that on. We don't have time to debate about that. But that means that the Soviet Union was in a defensive position to ensure they're not going to be invaded again. Because lo and behold, they get randomly fucking invaded by Western aggressors. Now, based on that history specifically that you brought up.
Yeah, Joseph Stalin was a shrinking violet who just wanted to play defense. I mean, this is just
Stalin. The truth is, there's no precedent for adventurism on part of Stalin. He was against adventurism and this Trotskyist delusion of exporting the revolution. Second of all,
I agree with that more or less. So the notion that he didn't roll across Europe. Wow.
He rolled across Europe. He rolled across.
Literally, no one will agree with that.
He rolled across Europe He rolled across Europe to ensure the Soviet Union does not get invaded again. Now, based on that history,
I think that was one of the motivations. But it was also about world communism, comrade.
Then why didn't they take the West? They could have easily taken the West. Why didn't they?
They didn't exactly take the West because the British Empire that was flailing still had some pop. The United States entered late. It still had some power.
The Soviets got there before anyone. They got there before anyone. They could have taken whatever they wanted.
They could have. They made a strategic decision not to. But Stalin clearly assumed that capitalist powers would turn on one another, and that you would soon have at least a European.
Stalin believed, as far as you're getting into the ideological bullshit. Let's just get back to the meat and potatoes.
Well, there's like diaries and interviews that indicate such things. I'm not getting into ideological bullshit.
You are. So let's get back to the meat and potatoes.
Why Germany up until 1989-91 if you're just
it was no more an occupation of Germany than America occupied Germany in the West. So it was formally not an occupation. It's just that Germany fell under the hegemony.
I agree, but people liked Western Germany a lot more. Let's just put it that way.
That's not necessarily true, actually. It's not necessarily true whatsoever.
Did anyone sneak into East Germany?
There was a brain drain from the east to the west. That doesn't mean everyone liked West Germany more than the East, though. It's not true.
That's fair enough, but and I agree with you that there's a kind of decadent temptation to a lot of the Americanized West. But at the end of the day, where would you want to raise a family?
The East.
In Bavaria, are you kidding? Or the
East.
Prussia?
Where would you want to raise a family? I mean, if you're a bachelor who's having fun, probably you want to live in the West. But for raising a family, of course, you wouldn't want to be in the more.
Which realm had higher birth rates?
I'm not aware.
Okay.
Was it the West? I'm assuring your point is that it's the West.
And the East has serious problems now.
Hold on.
Even East Germany kind of resembles Eastern Europe. I mean, even today, to some degree, it has serious problems that are kind of fairly tragic, to be honest, and could be solved. But you clearly have Soviet nostalgia, which is fine, but
it was much better to raise a family in the East. Much better. It's much better to raise a family
being a Ukrainian farmer. During Stalinism, maybe that's not the case.
You want to bring up the famine of 33 and 34 and debate about that, because you can't actually talk about why the fuck Europe would be against Russia right now, if not because of a mass psychosis, and it has nothing to do with Europe's own interests.
A mass psychosis.
And you've pivoted so much. You said it's because they fear being invaded by Russia. What? There's no precedent for Russia invading Europe. There's precedent for the West invading Russia, though, plenty of times.
Well, yeah, but there's Napoleon, Hitler, etc. But there's the perspective of a European at the end of the Second World War was, you have these Soviet tanks rolling in, taking over our countries.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens when you invade a country. The country's gonna push back and neutralize you. No, but they do deserve. The threat does deserve. The military does deserve to be disarmed, and the threat should be neutralized. The criminals who attacked you should be brought to justice, and the government that attacked you should be overthrown. Yeah, that's how it works. That's the way of war. Okay. It was a total war, a complete total war of annihilation, and the Soviets were very. They showed a lot of mercy to Germany.
I basically agree, but what is please refrain from the moralization. The idea that Germans,
the Germans have no reason to expect. Why should
understandable, because it's hell on earth.
There's what's hell on earth?
I think the Soviet Union, perhaps later on, I think it was actually pretty reasonable. And there's even, when I was living in Berlin for a little while, and even in Bavaria, there's a kind of nostalgia, a kind of hipster, fantasy of the Soviet days. But let's just be brutally honest here. Communism sucked.
I disagree.
It's just awful.
Even if I were to agree with you, which is completely irrelevant, it's not true, but it's completely irrelevant. What does that have to do with the newfound European unity against Russia not being based on any rational interests of Europeans themselves?
It's a vivid historical memory, is what it is.
Of communism, Russia doesn't live under the same system that it used to.
I know, but they're easily aligned. And
hold on, and you know why you're especially wrong? Yeah,
Russia
do you know
kind of
you know why you're especially wrong?
Post-communist.
Do you know why you're especially wrong about this? Because all of this anti-Russian sentiment, if it was just based in being traumatized by communism, you wouldn't see such high rates of nostalgia on part of the older generations in Eastern Europe for the. It has nothing to do. Even Polish nationalists have inherited the legacy of the Polish communist system. What you have are competing forms of nationalism in Eastern Europe that have specifically defined themselves against Russia. That's not because communism was so bad. It's because they needed to fill the vacuum left behind by the communist ideology after the fall of the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet bloc. So it's not because...
Fair enough. I might actually agree with a lot of what you just said.
Okay. So there is no rational reason for Europeans to fear a Russian invasion or to oppose Russia's actions in Ukraine. It seems like...
good that politics has nothing to do with rationality.
Well, okay. Can you admit to me that it's based on moralism?
No, I'm not going to admit that. Moralism.
Okay, so what expression have any Germans or French formulated in a significant capacity? The Ukrainian flag is the new George Floyd. It's the new wear your mask. It's the new get vaccinated. That's what it is. It's not based in any kind of like raw self-interest on part of Germans or French or Europeans.
I agree that is the case on social media, and there's a lot of
it's the case in general
that resembles BLM. I agree with that.
Yeah,
but
so it's look
real.
Okay, if you want to look,
social media distraction.
You want to look at, you want to have
changed over the past week.
Any which way you look at it, culturally and sociologically, this is an astroturfed, moralistic campaign that people use to identify themselves and virtue signal their compliance with the status quo and the institutions that grew us. On Reddit, on Twitch, on YouTube, wherever you go, on Twitter, people are doing this.
I don't disagree that there's an element of that. However, to claim that anything is fully astroturfed is just wrong. You cannot just invent things full cloth,
which you don't.
Half of the world to put a Ukrainian flag on their Facebook.
Because
there is something real in this. And in terms of like, we're just reestablishing the world order. What I am arguing is that the world has changed in the past week.
I fundamentally disagree. I fundamentally disagree.
We're in a new paradigm right
now. I fundamentally disagree that this is based in something real. No one actually gives a shit about Ukraine.
Well, it's
a way of expressing one's virtue signaling toward the agenda of the prevailing institutions, which is being rewarded through social feedback loops.
To a certain extent.
Yeah, it has nothing. It has nobody independently looks at this situation and just independently comes to some kind of solid position on it. Well, they're going with the flow.
No one have agency, according to you? Everyone's just a robot or an NPC?
I think Redditors are NPCs.
I will grant you,
I do,
to a certain extent, what you said, that putting a Ukrainian flag is a kind of virtue signal. I will agree with that. But like to claim that no one has agency or that there aren't real historical and geopolitical factors at play here is just ridiculous.
I think there is a reality of this type of, which is led, who has its center, by the way, in the Anglo-Saxon elites, which is this kind of condescending sense of superiority of over Russians, a kind of civilizational racism Europeans have against Russians and against Chinese and so on and so on. But the core of this identity that makes it possible isn't based in anything real within their own lives. It's based in institutions that distinguish them and which interpolate them as subjects. And to use less...
Sounds like you're describing systemic racism or something.
No.
Look, there is a European identity.
No.
There are smaller forms of European identity as well.
But the problem is hold on. There is a Russian identity. Russian identity is based in Russianness. We are Russians. It's our history. It's who we are. Same with Chinese, same with anywhere else in the world. But this so-called European identity that you're talking about is not based in any type of particular European civilization.
All you're doing is dehumanizing my people.
Shit, but this
you don't have an authentic identity, but you do.
No, maybe there is an authentic European identity, but I'm trying to say the one that is being displayed now in this Pledge of Allegiance to the Ukrainian astroturfing campaign is not based on that. It's based in a type of fake universalism, a false universalism, and a type of proving of one's reflexivity, which is what all of these astroturfed campaigns are about. You say Black Lives Matter, you say take the vaccine, wear the mask, because you're expressing that you're conscientious or you're civilized or you're somehow in the know and you're a universal subject, right? The problem is that Europeans are not universal subjects, they're Europeans. So if they started acting like Europeans and not pretending that there's the universal subject of American globalism, they wouldn't be against Russia and condemning Russia right now. They would just be looking after their own interests, the interests of Germany, the interests of France, the interests of Ireland, whatever you want. They wouldn't be acting on behalf of some kind of global, universal interest.
If you can create greater division in Europe, that is better for Russia. Russia, I'm sure, was enthused by things like Brexit. Russia is enthused by petty nationalist disputes. The fact is, part of European identity, I agree, is a kind of expansive, universal, if you want to say, Aryanism.
No, it's not, but it's not. Hold on. Spencer, the reason you're a tragical figure.
History doesn't exist.
Spencer, the reason you're a tragical figure is because you're an embarrassment. You're kind of right. It is based on a type of racist, neo-Nazism, whatever. But for the leaders of the Western world to come out and admit this means the end of the Western world's basis of soft power in the entire globe. So you're an embarrassment for them. You air the dirty laundry, the dirty truth they will never admit. And it's a precondition for Europe to not admit this in order to maintain its so-called unified identity. So the problem which you're trying to say is that, we have this kind of universal Aryanism. Again, what they're pretending to be is universal subjects in the abstract. They're not Aryans, they're not Europeans, they're not whatever, they're not any type of particular person. This is just all universal humanity. They say the international community, when in reality it's just Europe, America, and Australia. They don't have...
All of that is the last 30 years. I think things are dramatically...
When I talk about civilizational racism, I'm not talking about systemic racism. I'm talking about how the fact, for example, one does not become human, a universal human subject, according to these liberal Nazis, unless one is a Redditor, right? If you live in China or you live in Russia or whatever, you are backward, Asiatic, and so on. You don't have enough reflexivity. You're not conscientious enough. But when you're on Reddit and you're a Redditor who's, you like Pokemon and you like all that dumb bullshit that they like, right? You play video games, all of a sudden you become humanized. Because why? You're being interpolated by institutions and you're in the know in the way that they are, right? So this is what I mean by the civilization. I'm not talking about some woke bullshit. I'm talking about a specific type of historical false universalism that Europe has projected.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think you're making some interesting points about that quest to kind of be in the know and to be a kind of cosmopolitan digital citizen or something. I think what you're describing is a very real phenomenon. What I am saying, in contradistinction to that, is that as we kind of re-enter a new 20th century, the threat of a world war, the threat of nuclear conflict is in the air. That this is going to bring us back to a harder, grounded, more militarized identity. And literally speaking, in the sense that France and Germany are rapidly...
This identity has no substance. There's no substance to this identity.
Well, says you. I mean, I don't know...
What, okay, tell me what it's... Tell me what it's...
It's an assertion.
Then I'll ask you. Says me. Okay, I'll ask you. What is the substance of this new globalistic Reddit identity?
Well, I'm saying that I agree with that I might not call it a Reddit identity, but I understand what you're describing, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that.
But so what's its substance?
What I'm saying is that something else is emerging. We were entering that downward spiral, the nihilism, the last man.
So what is the something else?
Described it of the end of history of American.
What is this? What is the something else that's emerging that's not Reddit liberal globalism?
I mean, Redditors don't like rearm Germany. I mean,
so you're talking about
martial quality is going to be a key.
So you don't think
I have my own personal desires.
What you're talking about is simply you're talking about Reddit with weapons, nuclear armed Reddit.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I
that's
get
what you're talking about.
I get what you're saying. I get it, and I'm granting you that. Because you're describing a real phenomenon, which is good. All I'm saying is that there actually is something else, and that the current world order is more.
What is this something else? What is its?
What I'm arguing?
What is its wealth? What is its soul? What is its substance? What is it except this cosmopolitan digital identity or whatever? What is it?
I think it's there is a.
What's its logos? I should say. What is its logos? It's a better word to say. What is its like? What's its logos?
I understand. There is a kind of Heimat quest. There's a sense of homeness and belonging that I think is desired by every human being, and that exists certainly within Western. And
if you want to have homeless, and
there is a broader.
If you want to have,
there is a. Hold on, I'm answering.
Go finish.
There is a broader quest towards truth, towards expansion, towards new vistas. That is also really
this sounds it's all salad, no meat and potatoes. Vistas and
what is this? That's a fair criticism, actually, Haz. I mean, but you're asking me to describe like European consciousness, and so I'm going to have to use.
I'm asking you what the real like. Give me an example.
What is Russianness?
Give me. I can tell you Russianness. Give me an example. For example, give me an example.
The Roman Empire is your example of the combination of Apollonian and martial qualities within Western and Central European.
If I accepted this, fine. Even if I accept this, okay. If I
even the Greco-Roman religious.
Sure. Very wishy-washy.
That is an example.
Very wishy-washy. Even if I accept,
I just give you a literal example.
You talk about Rome, and I'm talking about right now. We don't have Rome. We have Reddit right now.
What is Russianness? What's Russianness?
Sure, Russianness is where can we even begin? Russianness is based on a civilization. Yeah, sorry.
Well, it's hard. Do you see how it's hard?
No, it's not. It's not hard. Like, it's actually not. It's not particularly hard. Russia's based on a type of determinate universalism, a kind of a society that's main theme is based on end times and apocalypse and sort of forestalling the end times and so on. But specifically, if you want to get to the meat and potatoes of Rama. Okay, from what I'm asking, the equivalent from what I'm asking to you is Russia has...
That was somewhat airy-fairy language, and I don't find apocalypse...
No, I just didn't know. I didn't know what you were asking for. If you're asking for the...
It's fine.
If you're I can answer.
The use of airy-fairy words.
Hold on.
It's hard to describe.
I thought you were asking for an airy-fairy equivalent to what you said. But if you want to know,
okay. Well, I appreciate what you said, but all I'm saying is it's you have to write a book on this.
No, I don't. I can give you a simplification. Russians' new kind of consciousness or new kind of substance or logos is specifically based in the Russian sovereignty, which is because of the nationalization of the oil sector, which has created new Russian platforms, new Russian social media, and new type of Russian identity, which on the one hand has the kind of qualities of universal citizen, but on the other hand has an acute sense of determinate and situatedness within the specific Russian identity. So they don't moralize against others and impose their way on others, but on the other hand, they have the same level of kind of, I guess, dynamism that the Redditors have, right? So same technological savviness and sophistication, but sense of fundamental groundedness in the particular Russian civilization. I'm not specifically asking you what defines Europe.
I get that. I think that's a good description.
Yeah. So my question for you is that when it comes to this new European identity that you're saying is being defined by anti-Russian sentiment and pro-Ukraine sentiment. What is that based on? What is that based on?
I have answered. I have given you a artsy-fartsy version
of that, but
and I am saying...
What is it based on?
The notion of a state that contains the state is Rome. That is the ultimate political structure.
Right. That's your interpretation. But I'm asking you, where can we locate any type of consciousness of this fact in the European society? We see the manifestation. We see is Reddit. You have to admit that it's Reddit. Globalist liberalism.
I'm not going to admit that that's the end-all be-all of European.
Sure, you can try to cope and say that the Reddit globalist liberalism is actually this resurrection of Roman martial spirit or something.
I'm not saying that.
So where is the Roman martial spirit? Where is it then? Because what we have now is Reddit.
It's emerging, and it is being kind of catalyzed or sparked by some of the things that we're seeing.
Where is it emerging?
It is emerging. There is a European Union, by the way, which it can only be. I mean, I agree. It's it starts and fits and starts, or it's emerging and fits and starts, but it has to be based on some sense of commonality between Western and Central Europe.
I'll tell you the commonality.
Whether you want to locate that in Latin language.
The commonality of the so-called
a Germanic and Romantic.
We're not seeing that. I'm not against that, but we're not seeing that. I'm not against Latin, Franco,
what
Frankish.
What do you want to see? See, you just want to see something that you want to see, as opposed to opening your eyes and seeing what is actually happening.
I'll tell you what we actually have. So-called European values are not European in particular. They are universal. They're pretended universal values of human rights and liberty. They're all negative abstraction. What is liberty? What is freedom? What does this even fucking mean? It doesn't mean anything determinate or particular. It's based on empty liberal abstraction. So where do we find particular Europe?
Preach.
Okay, but
I agree with everything you just said.
But the pro-Ukraine sentiment and the anti-Russian sentiment is not based on any type of European particularity. It's based on this American globalism.
I agree. I will grant you that, and I've already granted you this, that a lot of what you say is true. What I am engaging in is a kind of a situational concept that, due to the historical realities of Russia and Western and Central Europe, due to a new kind of emotional mood that's sweeping the continent, due to a kind of recognition of decline.
So do you think this mood...
There is a strong chance for something that is much more spiritual and much more in line with what I want to arise.
Let me confront you.
Maybe I'm engaging in wishful thinking. Fair enough.
Let me confront you with...
what I am arguing.
Okay, then allow me to confront you with a paradox. Okay? So... Would you say that this is an unconscious phenomena primarily, that this awakening?
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Okay, since it's primarily unconscious, because on the surface level, this is about universalism and globalism and Reddit and so on, liberalism. That's what we see on the surface. But you're saying that's just on the surface, and unconsciously, this is the awakening of the real European identity, right? The dilemma is this. The soft power of Europe, the power of Europe, the ability for Europe to have any type of influence or power in the international community when it comes to this event precisely lies in this surface level globalism. If Europe were to say, this is just us, Europe, versus the East will fucking eat Europe alive. They have to pretend to be universal to maintain their imperial power. If they don't be universal anymore, how can you enforce your will over Africa and Asia and Latin America when you are just acting on behalf of your own interests? Then it's total war, right? And I don't think Europe's going to fare very well in a situation of complete total war versus what, 6 or 7 other billion people on Earth. It's not going to work. So they have to pretend to be universal to maintain the type of...
it can work for a while. I mean, a few dozen people in London were administering India, to be honest. Secondly, in terms of the advancement towards the East, I mean, Germany was caught in Bismarck's nightmare, a pincer movement of the capitalist and communist forces united against it. I mean, again, I'm not endorsing
Russia, China, Iran, and we're going to have like a World War III where the allies are going to be like the 6 billion other, and this is the fantasy scenario, by the way, but Turkey, Iran, Russia, China, even India, Pakistan, they're all going to unite against an aggressive newfound
I don't worry
Europe.
about India or Pakistan, but I certainly worry about China. Yes, I want to avoid, like, one aspect of a Cold War and bifurcation is that you don't ultimately fight the hot war because it would be so immensely destructive that both sides are.
Then I'm trying to tell you.
I more or less agree with you.
I'm trying to tell you.
I think there's going to be a new concept of the East.
Okay,
East was the Soviet. Let me finish real quick. East was the Soviet Union. There's going to be a new East with basically China. That Chimerica arrangement, the iPhone designed in California, made in China. I think that might be ending in my lifetime. Yeah. It might be. And there might very well be a kind of new East-West division of the world. The sad thing of what Vladimir Putin has accomplished is that Russia is going to be the little brother to China in that scenario. And I don't wish that upon Russia.
I don't see that concretely because
join in with, us.
Concretely speaking, you're talking about a little brother, but China has never demonstrated it's going to encroach upon Russia's sovereignty. If China is more powerful than Russia, that doesn't mean it's strong-arming Russia into submission. It just means you have an alliance where with one that has 1.4.
I wouldn't want to be aligned with China. I mean,
well, that's your opinion.
Politically speaking, I mean, at the moment, the United States.
I'll tell you what I know from some of the Russian perspective is that I think Russians have fared better with the East than the kind of Teutonic genocidal Catholics that tried to forcibly convert them and attack them and engage in hostilities. I mean, the East is what has preserved Russia's unique Orthodox civilization. Why would Russia trust the West over them?
Well, that's fine, but you can be swallowed by the dragon too. I look, this is my personal opinion.
Okay.
I have affection for Russian culture. I would not want you all to be swallowed by the dragon.
I am not Russian.
I think there will be tremendous demographic, that is racial changes in Russia being a kind of little brother of the East. I don't wish that upon you.
Well,
because I actually have a lot of affection for Russia.
Well, you're talking about wishing. I genuinely pity the Western Europeans who are occupied and basically totally dominated by kind of this satanic American globalism, which is crushing their spirit, crushing their soul, suffocating them, introducing all manner of corruption, civilizational decay, and so on and so on. I mean, you're saying good luck to Russia.
It's actually not that bad.
I think it's pretty bad. I think it's pretty bad.
That like I agree with you in some kind of Spenglerian sense that we are just headed down the tubes. Like there's a certain kind of nihilistic death drive at the heart of the white race. I actually agree with you, and it's something that we need to confront. And there are a lot of different causes.
Don't you think this newfound militarization,
just claiming that America is this like horrifying hellscape and we're just suffocating Europeans
spiritually,
just so overstated.
Spiritually, yes.
I kind of agree. I look, I'm involved in a project of Aryan spiritual renewal. So
I didn't say anything about Aryan, but yeah,
well, I certainly wouldn't. I think Christianity is part of what you're describing. But
well, okay, so
I would not be promoting that for any white person.
Listen, my overall point is simply
Christianity
this.
is a utterly nihilistic religion at its very core.
I think the irony is you keep mentioning this word nihilism, but this kind of fascistic militarism is precisely based in what? Nietzschean nihilism, complete nihilism. End of
Nietzsche is not a nihilist.
Yeah, but you get it's
fight nihilism.
Yeah, that's the point, right? It's a vain. Nietzsche tried to fight it in vain. He couldn't do it. So that's the point.
If you believe that this world is a vale of tears and that nothing really matters and that the pure good is outside the material world and that one day we'll go to an afterlife and live forever.
This is a caricature of the Christian position. This is not Christianity.
Caricature, sure.
This is some kind of what you're talking about, some kind of Gnostic heresy. Real Christian religion is about the dialectic of heaven and earth, about the otherworldly and the worldly the moment of their meeting, right? And that's where meaning is.
Okay.
So, Mike, but this is
I think that's a better version of Christianity.
Different philosophical dispute going on.
Still.
To rein it back, how can Europe find meaning in a combination of Reddit globalism plus militarism?
I don't agree with your premise that like European culture at this point is just simply Reddit.
I think so. I mean, I think precisely so.
Okay, that's fair enough. And I also have granted you that you are describing something that is very real. And I think this is in some ways a product.
All right, let's just find. Let's
in the sense that we're living our lives.
Okay, let's communicate it. Okay.
Not in the real
let's
world.
just make it
in the metaverse. I agree with you.
But let's make it more clear, because when I ask for you,
America is just absolutely
okay, sure. But when I ask you, where can we find the independent European kind of identity or consciousness or logos, you give me something too broad and too like ancient. Like, I give you something very immediate and specific, the Reddit globalism.
I'll give you something that happened yesterday, and that's the rearmament of Germany. Okay, you can't have a civilization outside.
But you have a kind of nihilistic view. You don't understand. Simply arming is not a logos. This is the arm of Reddit.
I agree. Of course I agree with that.
This is Reddit arming itself.
It's a necessary precondition for... I wouldn't use the word... Logos means word, of course. It also kind of means logic. Has a very Platonic and Christian association.
Okay, call it what you want, but
a spirit is what I would call it.
Spirit, or a Geist, sure.
German
Geist, okay.
But you can't capture that outside of the material necessity of fighting someone to the death. And so you must arm. You must be willing to
fighting to the death for purpose. It's always for purpose.
I saw something where I don't.
Purpose here is Reddit. Hold on.
Where you evoked Hegel and maybe Kojev is getting it, but the master-slave dialectic. In that sense, I'm a Hegelian.
But the problem
you need to be willing to risk your own life.
Yes,
arm yourself, to be willing to dominate.
Hold on.
If you were going to have any form of consciousness, or spirit.
But master-slave dialectic is not just based on biological survival. It's based on purpose, logos. What is the purpose of rearmament except an extension of Reddit globalism?
I get that. I think that's actually an astute criticism that you're making. Absolutely.
Because I don't see the purpose. I don't see the purpose.
That is an astute criticism that you have just made. What I am saying is that out of this new kind of, I use it on Twitter today, like mortality salience, that sense that we might all die in a world war, out of that new sense, that pressure, there could be a revival of a spirit that defines German and European people. And maybe I'm engaging in a little wishful thinking.
I will...
it has to start somewhere.
For the sake of the spirit of intellectual whatever, here's what I'll grant, okay?
Intellectual whatever, yeah.
Reddit globalism has the specific feature of a lack of cognizance of mortality. It's a view of kind of...
I agree.
We are immortal, right? We live forever. There's no sense of...
We live in cyberspace.
Yeah, there's no sense of, like, as Heidegger would put it, there's no cognizance of finitude, right? And finitude is what defines our being, or our identity, sorry. Finitude is what defines us. But here's the problem. What we are not seeing is finitude is not rediscovered in a complete thermonuclear, like this threshold of just total annihilation or total war. Finitude takes a very specific, particular form, not of the finitude of biological life specifically, but the finitude of a kind of Geist or idea or state or determinate kind of logo. So that's the kind of... that's the thing that must be finite in order for us to be human, right? Us being finite in the sense of like physical death doesn't have to necessarily mean it. You can look in Liberia with its civil war in the 90s, complete slaughters, endless slaughterhouse, bodies flying death. This doesn't actually lead to any kind of awakening of Dasein or anything like that, right? So
what you're saying is very interesting, Hans, and it's actually surprising. And I think it's a very very good critique of what I put forward. I would simply offer that out of this new kind of finitude, this new sense of our own mortality, this new sense that we're going to have to risk it.
But the problem
there is the foundation for a real Geist is there.
But
that's what I'm suggesting.
The problem,
I'm hopeful.
Yeah. But the problem is that it's not really a finitude, because it's a kind of, you see this also with this new digital Reddit culture, whatever, is that they do have a sense of extreme violence and extreme kind of sense of apocalypse and annihilation. Like, for example, with cancel culture, when someone's canceled, they're dead. It doesn't matter what happens to them, raped, killed, tortured, who cares, right? So that's not a real
finitude. A few times.
That's not a real finitude, because it's simply, on the one hand, you have this type of kind of unconditional Reddit comfort and safety and identity, beyond the threshold of which is just complete negation, death, right? Finitude comes when you have negation of the negation, where it's not simply something, this empty universalism beyond the threshold of which is total negation. You have a determinate universalism beyond the threshold of which is a kind of sea of openness with which you can discover other particularities, have dialogue, something like that, right? So the problem is this rearmament and this newfound sense of like anxiety is a type of precisely a fanaticism perfectly compatible, not only compatible, but is an extension of Reddit globalism.
Okay. I simply don't agree with you, but I think I would tip my cap that you are making a very interesting and thoughtful criticism.
Okay.
And it's something I'm going to think about.